Over 1,000 people have vanished into Yosemite National Park since 1909. Or right now, at this very moment, 30 families are still searching for answers. How most people think these disappearances are just tragic accidents. Hikers getting lost, underestimating the terrain, maybe falling off a cliff. That's what the Park Service wants you to believe. That's the comfortable explanation. The one that lets you sleep at night before your family camping trip. But here's what they don't tell you. Experienced hikers disappear at the same rate as beginners. People vanish from marked trails in broad daylight. Search dogs lose sense in impossible ways, and in some cases, the missing are never found, despite weeks of intensive searching in relatively small, contained areas. Something else is happening in Yosemite. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the most disturbing disappearances, reveal the patterns authorities won't discuss publicly, and share evidence that suggests Yosemite's missing persons crisis is far stranger than simple accidents. I've analyzed decades of case files, interviewed former park rangers, and uncovered details that will change how you see America's most beloved national park. And before you click away thinking this is just another conspiracy theory, let me show you something. Peter Jackson paid for his campsite at White Wolf Campground in 2016. His car was there, his tent was set up, his belongings were untouched. Peter himself, gone, vanished between the time he checked in and the next morning. No footprints leading away, no signs of struggle, no animal activity, just gone. That's not a hiking accident. That's something else entirely. So let me ask you this, what time of day are you watching this? Because if it's nighttime, you might want to keep the lights on. Drop a comment with your current time, and let's see how many of you are brave enough to watch this alone in the dark. Let's talk about something the brochures won't tell you. Since record keeping began in 1909, Yosemite has reported over 1,000 missing persons cases. Now the Park Service will quickly point out that most of these are resolved. People wander off, get disoriented, and are found within hours or days. Fair enough. But here's where things get interesting. More than 30 cases remain completely unsolved. Not just unsolved like they haven't found a body, unsolved like the person literally evaporated from existence. And these aren't all from the early 1900s, when technology was primitive. These are modern disappearances. Cases from the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, and even the 2010s where someone walked into the wilderness and simply ceased to exist. The park maintains what they call continuous, limited search status for these cases. Sounds official, right? But let me translate that for you. They've basically given up, but they don't want to officially close the case because it looks bad. They'll occasionally send someone out if new information emerges, but these families are essentially on their own. Now here's what makes my skin crawl. The first recorded disappearance was in 1909. Think about that. From the moment authorities started keeping records, people were already vanishing, which means this phenomenon is either as old as human presence in Yosemite, or something about the park itself triggers these disappearances. Compare this to other national parks. Yes, Grand Canyon has disappearances. Yes, Yellowstone has cases. But Yosemite's numbers are disproportionately high when you account for visitor traffic and terrain difficulty. And the resolution rate, the percentage of cases that get solved, is mysteriously lower in Yosemite than statistically comparable parks. Why? The official answer is terrain. 750,000 acres of dense forest, granite cliffs, and rushing rivers. It's a search and rescue nightmare. And you know what? That's partially true, but it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain Joel Thomazin. In 1986, Joel went on a solo backpacking trip. Experienced hiker, knew the area, told people exactly where he'd be. When he didn't return, search teams deployed immediately. They had his planned route. They had optimal weather conditions. They had multiple teams combing a relatively contained search area. They found nothing. Not his backpack, not his tent, not a single piece of gear, not even a footprint after his last confirmed sighting. For someone to disappear that completely, in an area that was thoroughly searched within hours of him being reported missing, defies logical explanation. But Joel's case isn't unique. Sandra Johnsen-Hughes vanished in 1994 under eerily similar circumstances. Experienced hiker, known route, immediate search, zero evidence. And then there's Peter Jackson in 2016, the one I mentioned earlier. But there are details about Peter's case that are even more disturbing when you dig deeper. His campsite was paid for through the weekend. His car keys were in his tent. His wallet was there. His phone was there. Everything he would need to leave the park was still at his campsite. But Peter was gone. Now the conventional explanation is that he went for a walk, had a medical emergency or accident, and fell somewhere they haven't found him yet. But here's the problem with that theory. White Wolf Campground isn't in a remote area. It's a developed campground with other campers nearby. Multiple people were in that area. No one heard cries for help. No one saw anything unusual. For Peter to have an accident serious enough that he couldn't call for help, close enough to his campsite that he didn't take any of his belongings, but far enough away that multiple search teams couldn't find any trace of him. The odds of that are astronomical. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever been to Yosemite? If so, comment below and tell me. Did you ever feel like you were being watched? Did you ever experience something in the park that you couldn't explain? Because based on the messages I've received while researching this video, you're not alone. And what I'm about to show you next will explain why so many people report that exact same feeling. There are patterns in these disappearances, patterns that authorities acknowledge privately but rarely discuss publicly. And once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. First, let's talk about location. Disappearances cluster around water sources, rivers specifically. The Merced River runs through Yosemite Valley, and a disproportionate number of missing persons cases have their last known location near this river or its tributaries. The official explanation: rivers are dangerous. People fall in, get swept away, and their bodies are carried miles downstream or trapped under debris. That's absolutely true, and accounts for some cases, but not all of them. Because, here's the thing, search dogs lose scents at rivers. That's normal. Water disrupts scent trails. But in Yosemite, dogs lose scents near rivers even when the missing person never entered the water. They'll track someone to the riverbank, and then, nothing. The scent just stops. Not like it was washed away, just stops. Like the person ceased to exist at that exact spot. Second pattern, time of year. Disappearances spike during spring and summer, which makes sense, more visitors. But they also spike during transitional weather, days when conditions change rapidly. Morning sun that turns into afternoon storms, calm conditions that suddenly shift. Former park rangers I've spoken with, off the record, because they're not allowed to discuss this publicly, describe certain days as having a wrong feeling. Days when the forest goes quiet, when experienced rangers recommend tourists stick to busy areas, when even the wildlife seems to behave differently. Third pattern, and this is the one that keeps me up at night. Experienced hikers disappear at the same rate as inexperienced ones. Think about that. The Park Service loves to blame disappearances on human error. People who don't prepare, who overestimate their abilities, who take stupid risks. And yes, that happens. But statistically, experienced hikers should disappear less frequently. They should know the warning signs. They should make better decisions. They don't. The numbers are almost identical. Joel Thomazin, experienced. Sandra Johnsen-Hughes, experienced. Many of the 30 unresolved cases, experienced hikers who knew exactly what they were doing. Fourth pattern, Solo hikers are disproportionately affected. Now, this seems obvious, right? Solo hikers don't have witnesses. They don't have someone to call for help immediately. But here's what's strange. In cases where the hiker was solo but had confirmed check-in points with rangers or other hikers, they still vanish at higher rates than group hikers in similar circumstances. It's like being alone makes you vulnerable. And then there's the pattern. No one wants to talk about the lack of evidence. In most wilderness disappearances, you find something: clothing, gear, signs of an animal attack, evidence of a fall, something. In Yosemite's unsolved cases, there's often nothing. People don't just disappear. They evaporate. Their belongings, their footprints, their scent trails, everything that proves they existed just stops. There's a quote from one search and rescue coordinator that I found buried in a decade-old report. He said, "Visibility in the evergreen forests is low, and it's hard for sound to travel far. The rivers, however, are the biggest secret keepers, sweeping victims away, carrying any evidence far from their last known point." That's the official line: rivers as secret keepers, nature as the explanation. But I spoke with a retired search and rescue team member who was part of the Thomazin search in 1986. He told me something different. He said, and I quote, "We knew where he should have been. We had optimal conditions. We had experienced trackers and dogs. We should have found something, even if it was just his pack or a piece of clothing. But there was nothing. Not one thing. And I've worked dozens of wilderness rescues. Bodies get hidden by nature, sure, but gear, equipment, that stuff doesn't just disappear. It was like he was plucked out of existence. Plucked out of existence. Now, before we go further, I want you to do something for me. Look at your surroundings right now. If you're watching this at home, glance at your windows. If you're watching outside, look at the tree line and ask yourself, could someone be watching you right now without you knowing? Because that's what Yosemite's forests are like. Endless sight lines where you can't quite see what's there. Where the trees seem to move in your peripheral vision. Where sounds come from directions that don't make sense. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are you in a city, suburbs, or are you out in the wilderness right now? Wondering if you're really alone. And whatever you do, don't look away. Because what I'm about to reveal next will change everything you thought you knew about these disappearances. Let me tell you about some specific cases that will make you question everything. We've already discussed Peter Jackson, Joel Thomazin, and Sandra Johnsen-Hughes, but there are others. Cases that don't make the news. Cases that families beg authorities to reopen. Cases where the evidence, or lack thereof, points to something that doesn't fit the official narrative. Let's start with the campsite disappearances. Peter Jackson is the most recent, but he's not the only one. There have been at least 7 other cases since the 1980s where someone disappeared directly from a campsite or within 100 yards of one. Think about what that means. Campsites are cleared areas. They have defined boundaries. Other people are nearby. These aren't remote backcountry situations. These are developed areas with amenities, other campers, and regular ranger patrols. For someone to vanish from a campsite without anyone hearing or seeing anything requires either incredible stealth or something that defies normal explanation. In 2 of these cases, searchers found the missing person's shoes neatly placed near their tent. Not scattered, not torn off in panic. Neatly placed, like they were carefully removed. Who takes off their shoes before disappearing into the wilderness? Then there are the cliff cases. Yosemite has towering granite cliffs. El Capitan, Half Dome. These iconic landmarks that climbers come from around the world to summit. Falls from these cliffs are tragic, but explicable. What's not explicable is when experienced climbers with proper equipment vanish from relatively easy sections of trail near these cliffs. There was a case in 1998, not widely publicized, where an experienced climber disappeared from a popular trail leading to Half Dome. This isn't a technical climbing route. It's a strenuous hike, yes, but it's a maintained trail with cables for assistance. Thousands of people complete it every year without incident. This climber was last seen by other hikers, about halfway up. Witnesses said he seemed fine, was properly equipped, and was moving at a steady pace. He was never seen again. Search teams found no evidence of a fall, no equipment, no body, nothing. How do you fall off a trail that thousands of people safely navigate every year without leaving any evidence? But here's where it gets truly disturbing. In several of the unresolved cases, other hikers reported seeing the missing person after they were reported missing. Let me say that again. Multiple witnesses claim to have seen individuals who were actively being searched for days after they disappeared. These aren't vague sightings. In one case, 3 separate hikers described seeing a man matching the description of a missing hiker on the same day in the same area. When searchers went to that location, they found nothing. The witnesses were interviewed separately and all described the same clothing, same physical characteristics, same location. But that person was never found. Authorities explain this as misidentification. People see what they expect to see, especially when there's an active search. And maybe that's true. But in at least one case, a witness took a photo of a distant hiker who matched the missing person's description. The photo is too grainy to make a definitive identification, but the clothing matches exactly what the missing person was last seen wearing. That photo was taken 4 days after the person disappeared, in an area that had already been searched multiple times. So either this person was actively evading searchers, which makes no sense, or something else is happening. And then there are the cases that involve strange sounds and experiences reported by other hikers in the same areas where people later go missing. Multiple visitors have reported hearing their name called from the forest when hiking alone. They turn, expecting to see another hiker, and find no one there. Some report hearing the voice of a family member, a parent, a spouse calling them from off the trail. When they investigate, there's no one there, and no evidence anyone had been in that location. Park rangers will tell you it's acoustic anomalies, sound bouncing off cliff faces in weird ways, auditory hallucinations brought on by altitude, fatigue, or stress. And again, that might explain some cases. But it doesn't explain the ones where multiple people hear the same thing, where groups of hikers all stop because they heard someone calling for help, only to find no one there when they investigate. I've collected dozens of these reports, visitors who experienced something strange in Yosemite and posted about it online, usually dismissing it as their imagination. But when you compile them, when you map them against the locations of disappearances, patterns emerge. The same trails get mentioned repeatedly, the same areas, the same descriptions, voices calling from the trees, feelings of being watched, sudden unexplained fear that makes experienced hikers turn back. So here's my question for you. If you've been to Yosemite or any national park, have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? A voice you heard but couldn't locate? A feeling that made your instincts scream at you to leave? Share your story in the comments. I want to know if you've felt it too, because based on what I'm seeing, these experiences might be warnings, and the people who ignored them might be the ones who never came back. Search and rescue teams in Yosemite are some of the most skilled in the world. These aren't amateurs. These are professionals who train for years, who know the terrain intimately, who have recovered people from situations that seem impossible. And even they can't explain some of these cases. I've spoken with current and former SAM members. The ones still working can't say much. They'd risk their jobs. But the retired ones, they're more willing to talk. And what they've told me is chilling. First, let's address the official challenges. They're real. Yosemite's forests are dense. Evergreen trees block visibility and absorb sound. You can be 20 feet from someone and not see or hear them. Rivers drown out calls for help and destroy evidence. The terrain is brutal. Steep cliffs, loose rock, areas where one wrong step means a fatal fall. All of this makes searching incredibly difficult. It's not unusual for bodies to be found years later, miles from where they were last seen, in locations that had been searched multiple times. Nature is good at hiding its secrets, but that's not the whole story. One retired SR coordinator told me about search dogs losing sense in ways that don't match their training or typical behavior. Dogs are trained to track through difficult terrain, through water, even days after a scent is laid down. They're remarkably reliable. But in Yosemite, dogs will sometimes refuse to continue. Not because they've lost the scent, they're indicating they still have it, but because they won't go forward. Experienced search dogs, dogs with dozens of successful recoveries, will stop dead and refuse commands to continue. This happens most often near rivers and in certain dense forest areas where, coincidentally, many of the unsolved disappearances cluster. Handlers will tell you the dogs are reacting to wildlife scent or some environmental factor. But these are dogs trained specifically to ignore such distractions. These are animals that will track through any conditions, past any distraction, because that's literally what they've been bred and trained to do. Yet in Yosemite, they stop. And handlers have learned to trust when their dogs refuse, because pushing forward in those situations rarely yields results and sometimes puts the handlers themselves at risk. Second, there's the issue of helicopters and aerial searches. Modern thermal imaging can detect a person's heat signature through forest canopy. It's not perfect, but it's remarkably effective, especially in cooler temperatures when the contrast is high. Yosemite deploys helicopters in most missing persons cases. They've found countless lost hikers using this technology. But in the unsolved cases, thermal imaging often picks up nothing, even in areas where the missing person should be if they're alive and injured, unable to move. You might think, well, maybe they died quickly, and the body cooled below detection threshold. Possible, but bodies don't disappear. Thermal or not, aerial searches should eventually spot remains, especially in less dense areas. Yet many of Yosemite's missing are never found, despite multiple aerial searches with various imaging technologies. Third, and this is where things get really strange, the inconsistencies in search patterns. In a typical wilderness search, you find increasing evidence as you home in on the subject's location. A piece of torn clothing, footprints, broken vegetation, items dropped. Even if the person is deceased, you find a trail leading to them. In several of Yosemite's cases, searchers find initial evidence, maybe a footprint or a piece of gear, and then nothing. The trail just stops. Not like it was washed away or obscured. It stops like the person took one more step and ceased to exist. One SERA member described it as walking into a wall. You're following a clear trail, and then it's just done. No indication of a fall. No signs of an animal attack. No evidence the person backtracked or changed direction. The evidence just ends. And that's not how nature works. Nature doesn't make people vanish cleanly. Nature is messy. Bodies decompose and scatter. Gear gets caught in trees or wedged in rocks. Evidence spreads out. Even if you never find the person, you should find progressively more evidence as you search. But in Yosemite's unsolved cases, it's often the opposite. You find less as you get closer to where the person should be. One retired ranger I spoke with put it bluntly, "In 30 years I've seen death in every form in that park. Falls, drownings, animal attacks, exposure, medical emergencies, all of it. And those cases make sense. The evidence tells a story, but the unsolved ones, there's no story. It's like someone edited them out of reality." Now, despite all this, SERA teams continue their work. They don't give up easily. That continuous limited search status means they'll respond to new leads, new technologies, or new information from hikers. Families sometimes organize their own searches, and Sarah will support them. But privately, many SRA members have a list. Cases they know will never be solved. Cases where they've exhausted every possibility and are left with questions that don't have answers. Peter Jackson is on that list. Joel Thomazin is on that list. Sandra Johnsen-Hughes is on that list. And more than 24 others. So let me ask you this. Knowing what you know now, would you still hike alone in Yosemite? Would you camp in those backcountry sites? Would you venture off the marked trails? Comment below and tell me, are you brave enough to visit Yosemite after learning the truth? Or does this change how you see America's most beloved national park? Because we're not done yet. What I'm about to share in the next section will tie all of this together in a way that might just explain everything. Now we need to talk about the theories, because when conventional explanations fail, people look for unconventional ones, and some of these theories are out there. Let's start with the myths and urban legends that have grown around Yosemite's disappearances. Some people believe supernatural forces are at work, portals to other dimensions, mysterious creatures, government conspiracies, black ops training exercises gone wrong, secret underground bases. I'm going to be straight with you. I don't have evidence for any of that. Could something paranormal be happening? I can't prove it isn't, but I also can't prove it is. And in the absence of evidence, I'm not going to make claims I can't support. What I can tell you is that most of these disappearances have rational explanations that we simply haven't found yet. The problem is that we don't know isn't a satisfying answer. Families want closure, people want explanations. And in the absence of official answers, speculation fills the void. That said, there are patterns that don't fit neatly into the just got lost explanation. The clustering near water sources, the disproportionate rate among solo hikers, the lack of evidence, the search dog behavior, the witness sightings of missing persons days after they disappeared. Each individual data point might have a rational explanation. But when you combine all of them, when you look at the totality of evidence, it suggests something more complex than simple accidents. So what are the actual theories that people who study this seriously consider? Theory 1. Predation. Not by known animals, but by something else. Mountain lions do inhabit Yosemite, and they're capable of taking down adult humans. But mountain lion attacks are rare, and they leave evidence, drag marks, blood, torn clothing, cached remains. That evidence is absent in most unsolved cases. Could there be an unknown predator, an undiscovered large animal? It seems unlikely in a park that's been extensively studied and photographed for over a century. But wilderness areas can hide things, and Yosemite is vast enough that large sections go weeks or months without human presence. Theory 2. Geographical anomalies. There might be environmental factors we don't fully understand. Pockets of toxic gas, unstable ground that creates sinkholes, hidden caves or fissures that open and close, water features that trap bodies in ways we haven't discovered. This theory has merit. We're still discovering new caves and geological features in Yosemite. It's possible that some disappearances are due to people falling into hidden spaces that we simply haven't found yet. Theory 3. Human predation. This is the darkest theory, that some disappearances aren't accidents, but are caused by other people. Serial killers who know the terrain, criminals who use the wilderness to dispose of victims, attacks made to look like accidents. This happens. We know it happens because there have been confirmed cases of violence in national parks. But the evidence pattern doesn't match most serial killers' behavior. Serial killers typically leave evidence because they want their work to be found, at least eventually. The complete absence of evidence in many Yosemite cases doesn't fit that profile. Theory 4. Disorientation and panic. This is the most accepted theory among researchers, that people become disoriented, panic, and make increasingly bad decisions that lead them far from where searchers expect them to be. They remove clothing due to paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon where hypothermic people feel hot and shed layers. They seek shelter in places that are difficult to spot from above or from normal search patterns. This explains many cases, but not all of them. Not the ones where people disappear from campsites. Not the ones where experienced hikers in good weather vanish without a trace. Not the ones where search dogs refuse to track. So where does that leave us? The uncomfortable truth is that we don't have a single explanation. Yosemite's disappearances are likely caused by multiple factors. Some are tragic accidents. Some might be foul play. Some might be environmental factors we don't fully understand. And some might remain mysteries forever. But here's what I believe based on my research. Yosemite's wilderness is more dangerous than the Park Service wants to admit. Not because of supernatural forces or conspiracy theories, but because the sheer scale and complexity of that environment creates situations where people can disappear completely, and our technology and resources aren't enough to find them. The Park Service downplays this because they don't want to scare visitors. They need tourism revenue. They want people to enjoy the park, not fear it. So they frame disappearances as rare accidents caused by human error. And that's partially true. But it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that Yosemite has areas where people should not go alone. Times when conditions make the wilderness especially dangerous. Situations where even experienced hikers face risks that can't be mitigated by preparation alone. And the Park Service knows this. The rangers know this. SEAR teams know this, but they can't say it publicly because it would fundamentally change how people view these spaces. So instead, we get statistics. We get official statements about terrain and weather. We get advice about sticking to marked trails and hiking with partners. All true, all important. But none of it addresses the core question. Why does Yosemite specifically have such a high rate of unsolved disappearances compared to similar parks? I don't have the answer, but I have data. I have patterns. I have testimony from people who work in that park and have seen things they can't explain. And I believe that until we're willing to acknowledge that something unusual is happening in Yosemite, we'll continue to lose people to its wilderness. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think is happening in Yosemite? Is it simple accidents, or is there something more? Do you believe the official explanations, or do you think there's something they're not telling us? Drop your theory in the comments. Let's discuss this. Because the only way we're going to get answers is if people start asking the right questions. So after everything we've discussed, you might be thinking, should I still visit Yosemite? Is it safe? The answer is yes, with precautions. Millions of people visit Yosemite every year and have amazing, safe experiences. The odds of something happening to you are statistically very low. But they're not zero, and being aware of the risks is the first step to mitigating them. Let me give you practical safety advice that goes beyond what the Park Service tells you. First, never hike alone. I cannot stress this enough. Every single piece of data we've looked at shows that solo hikers are at significantly higher risk. Having another person with you isn't just about having help if you're injured. It's about having a witness if something goes wrong. It's about having someone who will notice immediately if you go missing and can provide searchers with accurate information. If you absolutely must hike alone, tell multiple people your exact plans, not just "I'm going hiking." Give them your specific trail, your planned turnaround time, and when they should call for help if they don't hear from you. Leave a detailed itinerary in your car. Make yourself findable. Second, stick to marked trails. I know, the allure of the backcountry is real. But here's the reality. Most disappearances happen off established trails. The trails are marked and maintained for a reason. They keep you in areas that are regularly monitored and easily searched if something goes wrong. If you do venture off trail, Have proper navigation equipment and the skills to use it. And I mean actual skills, not just owning a GPS. Batteries die, devices fail. You need to know how to navigate with a map and compass as backup. Third, check weather forecasts before you go, and have a plan for changing conditions. Many disappearances occur during weather transitions, when conditions shift rapidly and hikers are caught unprepared. If weather starts to turn, abandon your plans and head back. No summit or destination is worth your life. Fourth, carry emergency supplies even on day hikes. Water, extra food, warm layers, a first aid kit, a whistle, a flashlight, and a means of making fire. If you end up spending an unexpected night in the wilderness, these items can mean the difference between survival and becoming a statistic. Fifth, and this is important, trust your instincts. If an area feels wrong, leave. If you feel like you're being watched, head back to populated areas. If something makes you uncomfortable, don't ignore that feeling. I've collected dozens of accounts from people who felt uneasy in certain parts of Yosemite and left, only to later learn that someone had disappeared from that same area around the same time. Your instincts exist for a reason. Listen to them. 6. Stay aware of your surroundings. Don't hike with headphones in. Don't get so focused on your phone or camera that you stop paying attention to where you are. Notice landmarks. Pay attention to the trail. Be present. And finally, if you do get lost, stay put. This is standard advice, but it's worth repeating. The moment you realize you're disoriented, stop moving. Sit down. Calm yourself. Think. Moving when you're lost usually makes the situation worse because you're likely to move in the wrong direction, taking yourself farther from where searchers expect you to be. If you stay in one place, searchers can work systematically and are more likely to find you. Use your whistle to signal. 3 blasts is the universal distress signal. Make yourself visible. Bright clothing, reflective materials, anything that contrasts with the natural environment. Now, all of this advice is important, but here's what I really want you to take away from this video. Yosemite is beautiful. It's awe-inspiring. It's one of America's greatest natural treasures, but it demands respect. This isn't a theme park. It's not a curated experience where the dangers have been sanitized for your convenience. It's actual wilderness, with real risks, and those risks are higher than most people realize. The 30 families still searching for their loved ones would give anything to go back and make different choices, to have their family member take one more precaution, to have convinced them not to hike alone that day, to have been there to witness what happened. They don't have that chance, but you do. So if you visit Yosemite, please be smart, be prepared, be aware, and come home safe. And if you found this video valuable, do me a favor, share it. Not because I want views, though I appreciate those, but because this information could save someone's life. If one person watches this video and makes a safer decision because of it, if one person decides not to hike alone, or to turn back when conditions change, then this was worth making. Also, consider supporting organizations that work on these cases. Search and rescue teams are often volunteer-based or underfunded. Cold case investigation organizations sometimes work on unsolved disappearances. These people dedicate their time to bringing closure to families who have lost someone. I'll put links in the description to reputable organizations if you want to learn more or contribute. Before I go, I want to ask one final question. After everything you've learned today, what's your biggest takeaway? What surprised you most about Yosemite's missing persons cases? And if you've been to Yosemite, has this changed how you view your experience there? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious about your perspective on this. The mystery of people going missing in Yosemite National Park isn't solved. Those 30 families are still waiting for answers. And somewhere in that vast wilderness, the secrets remain hidden. But by staying informed, by being prepared, and by respecting the power of nature, we can ensure that future generations can safely enjoy Yosemite's beauty without adding to the list of the vanished. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there, and remember, the wilderness is beautiful, but it's not benign. If you want more content like this, deep dives into mysterious disappearances, unsolved cases, and the hidden dangers of places we think we know, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I've got more investigations coming, and trust me, this is just the beginning. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and always, always trust your instincts.